Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump saying he thinks a Russia-Ukraine peace deal is near, and the president urging the nation to renew their faith this Thanksgiving. What's next after a federal judge dismissed cases against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James? A legal analyst joins us to break down the judge's decision. And later, with Representative Elise Stefanik running for New York governor and leaving her congressional seat open, Sticker Mule CEO Anthony Constantino officially launches his campaign for New York's 21st district. China's Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin reaffirmed their support for the Venezuelan regime amid increasing tensions in the Caribbean. Thanksgiving travel is taking off. AAA forecasts a record-setting holiday period between today and Monday. What to be mindful of? The FBI has requested interviews with the 6 Democrats who posted a video telling military service members to defy illegal orders. Lawmakers say they won't be intimidated.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
The White House saying the U.S. has made tremendous progress towards a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. This while President Trump ushers in the holidays, saying Thanksgiving is a chance for Americans to renew their faith in God. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu at the White House. Mari, good afternoon.
Don, good afternoon. Yes, President Trump is saying today that he thinks we're very close to a peace deal for Russia and Ukraine, adding that his team has made tremendous progress over the past week in peace negotiations. The president is also directing Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, while U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll meets with the Ukrainians. The president also adds that he himself looks forward to meeting with both Presidents Zelensky and Putin, but he will do that only after the peace plan is in its final stages or is completely finalized. This is coming as Ukraine agrees to the U.S. Version of the proposal that was refined in Geneva over the weekend, and as U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll meets with Russian officials in Abu Dhabi about the proposed peace plan. Let's take a listen at what President Trump had to say this morning.
I've also ended 8 wars in 9 months, and we're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there. 25,000 soldiers, Ukraine, Russia. In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out. I thought that one would have been gone quicker.
President Trump is making those remarks at a ceremony this morning pardoning 2 turkeys ahead of Thursday's Thanksgiving holiday called Gobble and Waddle. And in his remarks, he also urges Americans to renew their faith this Thanksgiving holiday and touted his administration's economic agenda in lowering costs of Thanksgiving food. Take a look.
On behalf of the First Lady and the entire Trump family, I want to wish all Americans a very, very happy Thanksgiving. I hope all Americans will have the chance to enjoy the fellowship of family and friends and renew our faith in God's providence. We have more people praying. The churches are coming back. I don't know if you've been reading that story, but religion is coming back to America. According to the USDA, the price of Thanksgiving turkey is down 33% from its Biden-era highs. Potatoes are down 13%. Ham is down 15% compared to last Thanksgiving.
President Trump will be jetting off for Florida later this evening, where he will spend the rest of Thanksgiving week with his family in Mar-a-Lago. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you. NATO today scrambling fighter jets near Romania's border with Ukraine. They responded to the deepest ever drone incursion into Romania. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has the details.
Romanian and German NATO fighter jets were scrambled in what Bucharest called a Russian provocation. Romania initially scrambled 2 Eurofighters, which are part of German air policing missions in Romania. They tracked a drone in the southeast of the country before it re-entered Ukraine. The army later scrambled 2 Romanian fighter jets after radar showed a second airspace violation. Romania calls it the latest Russian attempt to provoke Bucharest.
We have a new incursion by a Russian drone, a new provocation by Russia against Romania, a drone that the Romanian army and the German pilots tried to shoot down.
US troops are visiting a Romanian airbase on Tuesday. The commander of the US Army in Europe and Africa says a new capability to shoot down drones will be deployed to Romania.
We have tested it, and it is in the final stages of being employed. Romanian soldiers and other alliance soldiers have been trained on this capability.
He added that the system will be employed very soon. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Proposed changes by European leaders to the US-Russia peace deal were rejected by Moscow yesterday. Some experts say the US proposal could be one of the Ukraine's last chances to secure a deal from a good position. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
President Trump's peace plan for Ukraine is gaining momentum, but Europe is pushing back. French President Emmanuel Macron said today the proposal goes in the right direction, but he said key elements remain unacceptable for Kiev and the European Union. He stressed that only Ukraine can decide on territorial concessions and warned Europe will not support a deal that looks like a capitulation. He also said today there's clearly no will from the Russians for any ceasefire. Macron also said there must be no limits on Ukraine's ability to rebuild its army and that decisions on frozen Russian assets in Europe are for Europe alone. European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen echoed this, saying any peace plan must forbid changing Ukraine's border by force and must not restrict its armed forces, rejecting the 600,000 troops cap in the US proposal. Geopolitics expert Alexandre Delval says there are several reasons why Europeans want to modify the plan.
I think that, first of all, there is pressure from the Baltic states, Poland and Romania, which are NATO's eastern flank. They do not want good relations with Russia, that see Russia as a permanent danger. Then there is an enormous pressure from England, which pushes against good relationship with Russia for their own interests, and Macron, who tries to entitle himself as a political leader supporting Ukraine.
But while Europe is a chance to put forward its own adjustments, Moscow has already dismissed them. The Kremlin said yesterday the European counter-proposal doesn't fit us at all, openly favoring Trump's initial 28-point plan. For experts, Europe's problem appears structural. Its counter-ideas cannot compete with US proposals. Delval says any failure to reach a peace deal now would likely be the worst option for Ukraine.
In Europe, every head of state say the 28-point plan appears to be pro-Russian, and Kiev is being encouraged to reject it. Problem is, there isn't many options left out of this plan. So peace is going to be very, very difficult. If the plan is modified too much, the Russians will just follow through their conquest agenda. It is very probable that the 4 strongholds in the rest of northern Ukraine, known as the 4 fortresses, will probably fall by spring, given the current pace of the Russian advance. This means that in 6 months, the Russians will have more territorial wins, and the Ukrainians will be in an even worse position to negotiate.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt commented today on allegations of the U.S. plan favoring Putin, saying any idea that the U.S. administration is not engaged with both sides equally in this war to bring it to an end is a complete and total fallacy. There are a few delicate but not unsurmountable details that must be sorted out and will require further talks between Ukraine, Russia and the United States, she added. Ukraine said Tuesday that it was hoping to finalize a deal with President Donald Trump in the coming days. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
French President Macron said Ukraine and its allies are at a crucial juncture and should seize the moment to make progress towards peace. The so-called coalition of the willing has committed to deploying troops in or near Ukraine to help ensure lasting peace. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
French President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday urged Western allies to bring rock-solid security guarantees to Ukraine in the push for a peace deal with Russia.
So the absolute condition for a good peace is a set of very robust security guarantees and not paper guarantees.
Macron made the remarks at a Coalition of the Willing video meeting an alliance of 35 countries committed to supporting Ukraine. He said they are at a crucial juncture and should seize the momentum of the negotiations to make progress towards peace. It comes during a renewed US push to end the war that has raged for nearly 4 years.
We've always expressed our support to the American efforts to put an end to this war. Any step that is taking us further down this path is a welcome step.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signaled support for the US peace deal framework, but stressed that sensitive issues needed to be fixed at a meeting with President Trump. Zelensky urged European leaders to hash out a framework for deploying a reassurance force to Ukraine and to continue supporting Kiev for as long as Moscow shows no willingness to end its war. Macron previously said that more than 20 countries had committed to deploying troops in Ukraine or to maintaining a presence on land, at sea or in the air to help guarantee the country's security the day after a peace deal is achieved. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer urged colleagues on the call to firm up their national commitments.
And it's only if Russia believes we're serious to responding to any violation that this will underpin a lasting peace. And again, it's great that the US have made progress on drafting this in recent days.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said they will continue to increase sanctions on Russia and said a central point in the negotiations is financing Ukraine, including through the use of frozen Russian sovereign assets. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
The U.S. and Russia holding peace talks in Abu Dhabi today amid the attacks in Ukraine, and President Zelensky wants to meet President Trump as soon as possible, possibly over Thanksgiving, to finalize a joint U.S.-Ukraine agreement on the terms for ending the war. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says, quote, "Over the past week, the United States has made tremendous progress towards a peace deal by bringing both Ukraine and Russia to the table. There are a few delicate but not insurmountable details that must be sorted out and will require further talks. The exact nature of today's discussions between the U.S. and Russia was not immediately clear." Ukraine, meanwhile, praises a peace proposal drafted in Geneva on Sunday, saying, quote, "We look forward to organizing a visit of Ukraine's president to the U.S. at the earliest suitable date in November to complete final steps and make a deal with President Trump." Ukraine says it is coming under another intense wave of Russian missile and drone strikes as both sides hit targets across the border. Ukraine says Russia launched a massive overnight barrage, killing at least 7 people and hitting residential buildings and energy facilities. Officials in Kyiv say multiple districts were struck, with fires in high-rise buildings and a second wave of missiles triggering early morning sirens. Russia says Ukraine also carried out deadly strikes, including the attacks on the southern region of Rostov. 3 people were killed and several others injured. It's been more than 50 days since the Trump administration deployed the Memphis Safe Task Force, and officials say it's making a big difference. At a news conference yesterday, Attorney General Pam Bondi, along with Tennessee officials, touted a significant drop in crime. Here are the details.
Memphis has spent years struggling with one of the highest violent crime rates in the nation, but leaders say a federal surge launched 2 months ago is producing dramatic results. Attorney General Pam Bondi says crime in the city has plummeted since President Trump ordered federal agencies to assist local law enforcement. Bondi says the new Memphis Safe Task Force, made up of more than 30 federal, state, and local agencies, is achieving results that would have been unthinkable just months ago.
The last 56 days that we have had this surge, compared to the same 56-day time period a year ago, shows murder is down 48% in just 56 days, sexual assault down 49%, robbery down 61%, overall serious crime down 45% here in Memphis.
Bondi says more than 3,000 arrests have been made and over 500 guns taken off the streets. The task force says one of the most significant outcomes, the recovery of over 120 missing or endangered children.
How remarkable is that, huh? 121 children and teens back home with their parents and guardians. No longer on the streets or in danger.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Scott Turner also announced a new hotline for residents in public housing. on which they can report criminals, illegal immigrants, sex offenders, human traffickers, and gang activity.
Protect your home. Protect your family. If you see it, if you hear about it, report it. And here's how. You can call 1-800-347-3735.
Tennessee Governor Bill Lee described what's happening as an example for the rest of the country.
Murder rates cut in half and crime rates in Memphis at their lowest level in 20 years. This is an example of what can happen when people set aside all their differences and focus on the people of Memphis, Tennessee.
But not everyone supports the task force. Critics say it intimidates law-abiding Latinos and that poor planning has left courts and the local jail overwhelmed by the increase in arrests. Still, supporters insist that after years of rising crime, Memphis is finally seeing a positive shift and say the mission now is to sustain it.
An ICE protester is charged for allegedly making threats of violence toward federal officers in Portland. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem gives stats on the number of assaults on ICE agents since January. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
A man who was frequently seen protesting outside of the ICE facility in Portland, Oregon, is accused of making threats toward federal agents, both in person and online. FBI Director Kash Patel states the FBI arrested a violent protester out of Portland who allegedly threatened to murder officers and assault their families. According to a federal affidavit, the suspect, John Cupp, has also posted TikTok videos calling for the eradication of Jewish people and denying the Holocaust. He first appeared in court on Monday. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says that there has been 238 assaults on ICE agents between January 21st and November 21st. She says that's an increase of 1,153% from the same time last year. Noem posts on X, over the past 10 months, Democrat politicians have compared ICE to Nazis, the Gestapo, and slave patrols. President Trump and I will always stand with the men and women of ICE who risk their lives every day to arrest the worst of the worst. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons says along with immigration enforcement, ICE also does a lot of counterterrorism work. While on the Ruthless podcast, he expressed one of his biggest concerns from the record amount of illegal border crossings that happened in fiscal year 2023.
That's the key thing. That's my biggest fear, too, is out of all these, especially these military-age males we let in, who do we really let in?
Yeah. Lyons also says the DHS has a lot of people in immigration detention centers because the Trump administration made it a priority to end, quote, catch and release.
Well, we're not going to just arrest someone to give you a chance to go out and do something again once we finally figure out, hey, you're a known suspected terrorist. We're keeping everybody in custody now.
Jason Blair, NTD News.
The FBI has requested interviews with the 6 Democrat lawmakers who posted a video telling military service members to defy illegal orders. The Bureau's request comes a day after the Pentagon threatened to recall Navy veteran and Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. The other Democrats who appeared in the video released last week include Representatives Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, Chris Deluzio, and Chrissy Houlihan. All are military veterans. Former CIA officer Senator Elisa Slotkin participated in last week's video as well. The lawmakers responded to the FBI request in a joint statement. The Post read in part, quote, President Trump is using the FBI as a tool to intimidate and harass members of Congress. Their statement continued, quote, no amount of intimidation or harassment will ever stop us from doing our jobs and honoring our Constitution. President Trump has accused the lawmakers of sedition. A major update on the Democratic lawmakers who appeared in a video telling military members to not obey illegal orders. In a joint statement today, the lawmakers said the FBI is looking to interview them. They added that, quote, no amount of intimidation or harassment will ever stop us from doing our jobs and honoring our Constitution. Joining us to discuss this, Gerard Filitti, Senior Counsel at the Lawfare Project. Gerard, good afternoon. So I guess the big question here is, did these lawmakers break the law by saying what they did?
Well, that's certainly what the FBI is looking into. And the question becomes whether what they said amounts to sedition or some other criminal charge that can be brought, or whether, as sitting members of Congress, they were exercising their parliamentary rights to speech, or as private citizens exercising their First Amendment rights. I think that overall it is very difficult to bring criminal charges against them. However, this is sensitive because if these statements had been made by an active duty member of the armed services, they would almost certainly be prosecuted under the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
So if you're saying it's difficult to bring charges, what questions could then be the FBI looking to ask during the interviews?
In part, the questions will go to intent and whether the intent here was to actually have armed services personnel refuse to carry out orders. If that's the case, that is the makings of charges for interfering with command influence or even the makings of a sedition charge if the goal was to use force in some way to overthrow the government. Again, that's a very difficult case to make, and I don't think anyone expected the desired outcome to be the use of force to overthrow the government. However, it's very dangerous when people not in the military chain of command insert themselves into that process and create confusion for service members.
All right, let's move on from that because I also wanted to ask you about the dismissed indictments of James Comey and Letitia James, which is another big story today. So as you already know, Judge Cameron Curry ruled that the prosecutor who brought the indictments was actually invalidly appointed. What is your analysis on whether Lindsay Halligan had the authority to bring the indictments?
Well, under black letter law, which the court did a good job in considering, I think the court came up with the right conclusion that this appointment, Halligan's appointment, was not valid. The president is allowed to appoint on an interim basis for 120 days an acting U.S. attorney. And since the first appointment passed 120 days, there was another appointment made subsequent to that, and that's simply not what the law permits. In other words, Halligan was not appointed in accordance with the law, and because of that, any document she signed, any prosecution she undertook, the charging documents, for example, are invalid. So it's the right decision, but it's one on a technical and procedural basis and does not actually consider the merits of the case or whether any of this was politically motivated.
So does this case or this ruling actually have any impact on Halligan? What happens to her?
Well, the impact on Halligan is that she really shouldn't be signing any more indictments. The court is essentially calling out the fact that she does not have the authority. She is not the acting U.S. attorney in function because she was not properly appointed to this. So this calls into question who should be running the office of U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. According to law, and what should happen is that a district court would appoint an interim acting attorney general for that, a U.S. attorney for that district until such time as the president gets Halligan confirmed by the Senate.
So both were dismissed without prejudice, but in Comey's case, has the statute of limitations passed? What are the prospects of refiling these cases for Letitia James and James Comey?
The only way this case can be kept alive for Comey is if it is appealed by the government and the appeals court determines that Halligan was lawfully appointed, which reinstates the initial indictment. That is highly unlikely. If this is not appealed or the ruling stands, then the case against Comey is essentially dead. The statute of limitations has passed, and you cannot re-indict him after that statute. As for Letitia James, my understanding is that some of the claims still are within the statute of limitations, so a proper indictment could be filed again in her case, and a grand jury would need to consider it and rule and vote on an indictment.
So Attorney General Pam Bondi said the Justice Department would immediately appeal the judge's ruling. I'm just wondering, what could the argument be then?
Well, the argument would have to be a technical one based on whether or not there could be a second appointment made of the same or a different person as an acting U.S. attorney before there's a Senate confirmation. Now, traditionally, what we've seen in case law is you only get one 120-day period appointment before the Senate has to confirm or not confirm someone. So this would require an extension, really a leap of logic that the Justice Department is arguing. The president can essentially keep appointing people until the Senate approves someone, confirms someone. That's a novel argument. That's not one that has been successful before. So we shall see what the appeals court says, but more likely than not, it will uphold what the district judge said.
Okay, well, Gerard, that's all I was wondering today. Thank you for speaking to these topics. Have a pleasure having you on.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
As China-Japan tensions continue to heat up, Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi spoke with President Trump today. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on their phone call, the pair's first conversation since Japan's comments on potentially defending Taiwan, which sparked a dispute with the Chinese regime.
Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi said she spoke with Trump at his request.
I thanked him for sending me a copy of an American newspaper reporting his recent visit to Japan with his autograph, and valued America's initiative towards peace in Ukraine.
Takaichi described the call as another opportunity to reaffirm close cooperation between Japan and the United States.
President Trump said we are extremely close friends and happy to receive a phone call anytime.
China said Sunday that Japan crossed a red line after Takaichi suggested a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. A Japanese government spokesperson said Japan must firmly refute China's claims. Returning to the call, Takaichi said Trump briefed her on the latest in U.S.-China relations,
including last night's phone call between the two leaders. He also asked about the G20 summit, which I attended.
Takaichi was talking about the conversation Trump had with Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping yesterday. Trump wrote on Truth Social that he discussed many topics with Xi, including the Russia-Ukraine conflict and fentanyl. Trump also said he had accepted Xi's invitation to visit Beijing in April, while Xi will make a state visit to the United States later in the year. Trump raised soybean and other farm product concerns with the communist leader as well. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said yesterday the Trump administration expects to announce an aid package for U.S. farmers within 2 weeks, speaking on CNBC.
The president always said he would take care of the farmers. They have been with him since he came down the escalator just a few blocks from here in 2015 and began this next chapter.
U.S. farmers lost billions this year as top buyer China turned to Brazil and Argentina amid tense trade talks with Washington. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The U.S. recently joined several other nations to push for an end to human rights violations in China. Just days later, pro-CCP groups harassed peaceful protesters in Australia. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more.
The United States has joined a group of 14 other countries, including Australia, Japan, the United Kingdom, and a few others, in signing a statement to the UN calling for the immediate release of people who the Chinese Communist Party has illegally detained for exercising their fundamental freedom of faith. In the statement, the countries raised concerns that ethnic and religious minority groups, particularly Uyghurs, Christians, Tibetans, Falun Gong practitioners, and others, have faced targeted repression, including through separation of children from their families, torture, and the destruction of cultural heritage. The countries are pressing the United Nations to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable in a meaningful way to combat this human rights issue. It comes just 1 week after the CCP illegally arrested nearly 20 leaders of Zion Church. That's one of the largest underground Christian churches inside of China. One of those leaders, Urza Jin, who's the founder of Zion Church, his daughter testified to lawmakers on Capitol Hill last week. She's urging U.S. leaders to do more to get prisoners of conscience like her father freed.
I'm sometimes indeed fearful. After all, I know that I seek to expose and hold account the second most powerful country in the world. Yet as a Christian, I believe that we are asked to take courage and speak truth, and that God who created heaven and earth will stand by our side.
This comes as a top Chinese Communist Party leader, Zhao Leiji, is visiting Australia right now. Zhao was the subject of a push for sanctions here in the U.S. last month due to human rights issues. Because of his high rank, he plays a lead role in the persecution of Falun Gong, a meditation discipline centered on aligning oneself with truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Amid Zhao's visit to Australia, a group of Falun Gong practitioners in the country peacefully protested, trying to call attention to the widespread persecution that he's engaged with, including forcibly removing organs from prisoners of conscience. While those protesters were holding banners shedding light on this issue, some members from a pro-CCP group by the name of Fuqing Association tried to block these banners from being seen and harassed protesters. One of the protesters, Sao Juxing, had his shirt ripped open by one of the members from the pro-CCP group. Another protester was hit in the head with the flagpole. This isn't a one-off incident happening in Australia. Anywhere Falun Gong has a presence, which is throughout much of the world, there are pro-CCP groups directed to harass and threaten them to try to export the CCP's persecution of the practice outside of its own borders. This was also a key focus in last week's hearing on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers and U.S. leaders are actively working to expose and stop the CCP's transnational oppression here in the U.S. and abroad. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The families of 300 U.S. citizens hurt or killed in the October 7th attack on Israel sued Binance. They're claiming the cryptocurrency exchange provided aid by transferring more than $1 billion among accounts Hamas and other terrorist groups controlled. The lawsuit, which was filed in a North Dakota federal court yesterday, comes about a month after President Trump pardoned Changpeng Zhao, Binance's founder, who was convicted of money laundering in 2023. It claims that the company ignored warnings from its compliance vendors about suspicious transactions and skipped basic security checks on funds flowing into its network. Binance declined to comment on the lawsuit. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says there's a very good chance President Trump will announce his next pick for the Federal Reserve chair before Christmas. Bessent is leading the search to replace Jerome Powell when his term ends in May 2026. He discussed the complexity of the job on CNBC.
The Fed has become this very complicated operation. It's no longer just a price setting of money. There's this very complicated calculus between the monetary policy, the balance sheet, and regulatory policy.
Trump has repeatedly criticized the Fed and recently said he'd love to fire Powell, even joking to Bessent to fix it fast or be fired himself. Bessent downplayed the remark, saying that the president was joking. Powell, meanwhile, is navigating a divided Federal Open Market Committee, with markets expecting yet another rate cut in December. U.S. sales at retailers rose slightly in September. It was the fourth straight month of gains. According to the Commerce Department data released today, sales rose 0.2% in September from the previous month. That is much lower than the 0.6% rise in August. The September report was delayed more than a month because of the government shutdown. Retail sales make up about a third of all consumer spending. In September, employers added jobs at a strong pace. Employment ticked up slightly but stayed low. Low unemployment and a strong stock market helped boost spending. Congress is now debating an extension to the temporary tax credits for Obamacare. Joining us to discuss is Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So, Tony, good to have you here. Some numbers here. Obama premiums had already doubled since 2013, and by 2025, they were up nearly 133%. So what do you say about this? What is the fundamental cause?
Well, the fundamental cause, Don, good afternoon to you, is that the system was broken from the offset. The very framers of Obamacare, those legal analysts they pulled together to write the original Affordability Care Act options, admitted that it was doomed to fail from the start. There are those who believe there were political motives. There are some who just said that it was a kind of halfway between corporatist and socialist policy gone wrong. The fact of the matter is it didn't work for Americans. We were told it was going to be amazing, and it has failed and has needed to be propped up by bigger and bigger subsidies. So the question becomes, are we just going to subsidize it from now into eternity and therefore drive the cost to American taxpayers? Or are we going to reframe an entirely new system? Somewhere in the middle of that, Don, is the question is, how do you limp America off of the Affordability Care Act, the Obamacare system? You have to do it one way or another, because if you just cut it off, it's a big rug pull, let's say, then it's going to cause some severe dyspepsia in the market. And most importantly, those who don't spend their days paying attention to this 24/7 in news coverage, they're not going to know until their coverage has expired and they need medical care right away. So this has to be done with a scalpel, maybe more than a sledgehammer.
So, Tony, could you just address one argument here? Could the reason for the rise in cost in Obamacare premiums because of already high pharmaceutical prices and overall inflation in the healthcare sector?
I think that in a way that if your leg was broken, you might also have a stubbed toe. Yeah, sure, rising costs in pharmaceuticals could be a considerable issue. But the main issue is that the Obamacare subsidies are directly funding insurance companies. So they can just send the premiums higher and higher and higher. After all, your client's not going to pay those premiums. The insurance company is going to pay those premiums or request those premiums paid by the federal government. And so if you are, let's just pick a random insurance company out of thin air, Cigna, for example, Cigna will take a claim and they will say, well, you're on the Affordability Care Act, so therefore we will charge the government $4,000, where if perhaps that I was brokering one-on-one with Cigna, again, I'm just picking a random insurance company, I'm not saying anything about Cigna, just the first one that popped into my mind, then there would be a lower price negotiated. So this is one of the ways and reasons why the Trump administration is currently looking at health savings accounts and funding the employer provider of healthcare or Americans themselves directly for going into that insurer market. When you have a middleman, the middleman tends to do what all middlemen do. That's up the cost both ways because after all, they're doing the facilitating. So why wouldn't they charge more?
So, Tony, can you just talk a bit more on what customers are getting out of this? How much choice does Obamacare provide to patients? And what about the health outcomes compared to private insurance?
So, great question. The different sections and slivers of the Affordability Care Act, the different tiers in the model, don't provide the best care. In fact, there are those who can't get doctors that they had before the Obamacare, which again is ironic considering the if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor lie. Of course, there's a system of care that link insurance networks to certain care facilities. For example, because of the reframing of the insurance market that came about as of Obamacare, even not being on the Affordability Care Act myself, I now have to travel dozens of miles just to get certain kinds of blood work done. And those who are glued to the Affordability Care Act program, they're lucky if, again, out in the Western United States, if they can even find care in their county or their section of the state, their congressional district, for crying out loud. So when we're looking at the reforming of the healthcare system in the United States, understanding that government subsidized programs have resulted in less choice, as they always have for every program throughout history. They've resulted in less efficiency, and therefore they have resulted in a lower standard of care. We can see this from the UK to Canada. Throwing government money at something is how you end up getting toilets that cost $45,000 and a nail that costs upwards of $3,000.
So, Tony, you talked about indefinitely subsidizing the program. Some
Yes.
more numbers here for you and our viewers. So subsidies have climbed to an estimated $138 billion per year. And on top of that, 80% of people are just paying $10 a month. So, I mean, how sustainable is this in the long term?
It's not, because again, as costs continue to rise, as insurance companies continue to eat up subsidization money, which, by the way, I don't care what industry you're talking about, this is always how subsidization works. Especially, we've seen this in military contracting or governmental construction contracting. That's what I was alluding to earlier with the expensive toilets, or a scandal from the early 90s, the expensive hammers and nails of the early aughts and the late 90s. The idea that the subsidization can ever get smaller naturally has never occurred before. And so it has skyrocketed. You see this exponential curve on the chart of subsidization money funneling into the Affordability Care Act for more and more people to sit in that and only pay $10 a month. It's an incredible tax burden, but more so, it is a major hamper on the industries themselves because you're slowing down efficiency, which also compounds how expensive something is. So filling out 236 forms so that you're government compliant, you've paid $10. The system is being taxpayer funded out the wazoo. It's horribly ineffective and harmful for Americans.
So, Tony, I just want to end this conversation with potential solutions here. Do you think we should try to mend Obamacare's shortcomings, or should we replace it completely? What are the options?
I mean, the honest answer is if it's worth doing right. We actually need to see a system in which the government deregulates the healthcare market, in which case I'm able to actually go and broker a price between my local doctor, between my insurer. There's no reason that in several states around this country, nurse practitioners need a doctor to look over their shoulder to provide acceptable care. You could deregulate a lot of this and get the middlemen out, and then there wouldn't be a need heavy subsidization. There will be tax breaks for health savings accounts for individuals who are spending money towards their healthcare expenses. These are common sense fixes that we have seen work in other countries around the world. I do think we're going to have to stair step off of this, just coming from the education field and science fields myself. When you cut a government program, you need to relax and phase out the program. Otherwise, you rug pull the people who are on it, who, given that it's a healthcare program, may not be in the best mental or physical state to readily change to a brand new program right off the bat. If you're going through a major series of surgeries and your healthcare suddenly ends, a rug pull is not the best option. A phase out's more, humanitarian, for crying out loud.
Well, all right, Tony, well said. Good to speak with you today. Thank you.
Don, always a pleasure.
There's a newcomer running for the House seat soon to be left open by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is running for New York governor. Sticker Mule CEO Anthony Constantino made headlines during the last presidential election when he erected a massive illuminated vote for Trump sign atop his Amsterdam, New York factory. Now at the same site, in front of a wall of Thanksgiving turkeys, he has launched his congressional campaign. NTD's Chris Bob has more.
I'm in Amsterdam, New York, where Anthony Constantino, the CEO of Sticker Mule, just announced that he is running to succeed Elise Stefanik in New York's 21st district. Stefanik has represented this New York district since 2014, winning her 2024 re-election with 62% to 38%, making it safely Republican. On this cold day after hours in upstate New York, Anthony Constantino gave away a number of hoodies as well as 2,000 turkeys as we get close to Thanksgiving.
I am here to ask for your support, your family support, and the support of, well, pretty much everyone else you know, as I've officially decided to run for Congress. Others gave up on New York. I stayed and built my business here to protect my community and my friends from the horror of economic decline.
Hey everyone, it's Assemblyman Robert Smullen.
So far, Constantino is running against Republican New York Assemblyman Robert Smullen. Both candidates are competing to position themselves as President Trump's preferred choice. At his campaign announcement last week, Smullen highlighted his experience working in Washington, including serving as White House fellow under President George W. Bush at the Department of Energy, and in 2017, being named a member of President Trump's Commission on White House Fellowships. He declared he is the, quote, only Trump-appointed conservative in this race. Meanwhile, Constantino says he is the only candidate loyal to President Trump who can use his business experience to promote the district.
I think the biggest thing I can do is get us top of mind. You know, that's an easy one. I think I'm more positioned to do it than anyone. We got to be top of mind so people even know we exist. Where, you know, President Trump talks about the forgotten people. We're sort of the forgotten district, and we got to be top of mind so people think about coming here and they see positive things are going. And I'm trying my best to lead by example. President Trump can't fix the country on his own. I can't fix NY21 on my own, but I think I'm more equipped than anyone to inspire other people to get involved and help, and that's the ultimate way to do things. The swamp exists in business, and it exists in every organization. When you have an organization that's been around for a long time and it's not performing, a swamp forms, and you've seen this in business, and CEOs need to get in and shake things up and fix them. The most exciting thing we can do to send shockwaves through the country is to turn New York red and show people that we're going to go in a different direction, that we're going to work on cutting costs, cutting taxes, cutting regulations, which is going to make people want to come back here and going to make us exciting again.
To watch the full interview, you can go to ntd.com. From Amsterdam, New York, for NTD News, I'm Chris Bob.
Now to California, where U.S. Representative and newly declared candidate for governor Eric Swalwell wants to give residents another way to vote. He's pushing for voting by phone amid a competitive race to replace Governor Gavin Newsom. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell, who announced his bid for California governor last week, says he wants voters to be able to cast their ballots using their phones. He discussed the idea on CNN's The Story Is with Elix Michelson on Saturday.
I want us to be able to vote by phone. I think every Californian
vote by phone.
Vote by phone. Yeah, if we can do our taxes, do our, make our healthcare appointments, make essentially do your banking online, you should be able to vote by phone.
Swalwell said he wants California to aim higher than simply doing a little better than Republican-led states when it comes to voting.
I want us to be a blue state that doesn't do just a little bit better than like Georgia or Alabama when it comes to like voting access. I want us to max out democracy. Also, as it relates to democracy, if you wait in line for 30 minutes or more, if you do want to vote in person, I think you should fine every county for every minute that a person has to wait longer.
He also said he wants to modernize California's Department of Motor Vehicles so people no longer have to make in-person visits. The race to replace Governor Gavin Newsom is already crowded. On the Democratic side, candidates include Representatives Eric Swalwell and Katie Porter, former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former State Controller Betty Yee, former School Superintendent Tony Thurmond, attorney and former Health Secretary Javier Becerra, billionaire Tom Steyer, and former Majority Leader Ian Calderon. Several candidates are facing controversies. Porter has faced backlash after a viral interview and a past video showing her scolding a staffer. Becerra's campaign is under scrutiny after a longtime aide used a campaign account to boost their own pay, although Becerra himself is not accused of wrongdoing. On the Republican side, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, former Fox commentator Steve Hilton, and businessman Leo Zaki are aiming to secure one of the top 2 spots for the November election. In California, the top 2 candidates move on to the November election no matter their party. With so many candidates, they could advance with just over 20% of the vote. A Republican hasn't won a statewide race in nearly 2 decades. The last time was in 2006 when Arnold Schwarzenegger was re-elected governor. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Former Democratic Senator Doug Jones is running for governor of Alabama. He made the announcement yesterday. Jones is best known for his high-profile win over Republican Roy Moore in 2017. Jones was the first Democrat to win a Senate seat in Alabama in decades. If Jones wins the primary, it could possibly set up a rematch with Senator Tommy Tuberville, who has already entered the race. Tuberville, an ally of President Trump, beat Jones by 20 points in 2020. Tensions between the U.S. and the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro have shifted into the calculus of great power competition. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez breaks down the links between the Maduro regime and major U.S. adversaries.
According to Nicolas Maduro, an indicted narco-terrorist, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, the leaders of China and Russia, sent him letters expressing their solidarity and support amid rising tensions with the United States.
Es impresionante. It is impressive how a movement of solidarity is rising everywhere in support of the victorious effort of the indestructible people of Venezuela in the face of these threats, psychological, political, diplomatic wars, whatever they do. However they do it, wherever they do it, they will not be able to defeat Venezuela. We are invincible.
The U.S. government has designated the Cartel of the Suns, the cartel that Nicolas Maduro is accused of leading, as a foreign terrorist organization.
Venezuela is run by a narco-terrorist ring that traffics drugs, weapons, human traffics as well, into the United States.
Top Venezuelan officials have been using the Venezuelan military and its installations to traffic drugs. The survival of the regime is the only thing keeping them from facing justice.
Hoy Marco Rubio, ustedes saben, sacó otro refrito.
Today, Marco Rubio, pulled out another rehash about the Cartel of the Suns, that now it's a terrorist organization. Ridiculous. They're ridiculous. They repeat and repeat the story about drug trafficking, the drug trafficking story.
The regime is accused of killing over 8,000 civilians for resisting their authority. And unofficial results show that over 80% of Venezuelans voted against Maduro in last year's presidential elections.
So we know, we have information that maybe the top echelon of the military forces in Venezuela may be with Maduro, and they're going to flee with him. But the middle and lower ranks are with the opposition.
The Venezuelan regime has been economically propped up by China and Russia and has close ties with Iran and its proxy terrorist organizations Hamas and Hezbollah.
Venezuela has been the launching pad, the hub for our enemies. The Iranian, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Cubans, the Nicaraguans, people that hate the United States, and the only thing they want to do is do harm to us and to our young Americans.
It's important to note that the Venezuelan regime also provides oil at discounted prices to Nicaragua and Cuba, the only other 2 dictatorships in the region, and allowing for them to survive. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The highest-ranking officer in the U.S. military traveled to Puerto Rico on Monday to meet with American forces stationed in the Caribbean. There, the United States has ramped up its military presence to combat drug trafficking. He's also expected to travel to Trinidad and Tobago today. Joining us now to discuss this is Armin Kurdian, foreign policy and national security analyst. He's also a retired U.S. Navy captain and currently a California State Senate candidate. So Armin, thanks for joining us today. How are you interpreting these visits? What's the purpose of the trip?
Hi, Don. Obviously, the military presence is set to deliver a very heavy diplomatic message to the Maduro regime. On paper, the Venezuelan military is not even 1/100th of a match of the U.S. military. So they know that, and we know that. But this is a lot more than simply a force-on-force competition. This is a little bit more delicate because of what Venezuela is allowing to happen with the transportation of drugs through its country, most of which aren't actually manufactured there, but they're freely allowing drugs to come through Colombia, out off of its ports and coming to the United States and actually Europe. So with this ramping up of pressure, this is simply another bit in the toolbox that the U.S. is trying to employ against Venezuela, on top of all the sanctions and the isolation that it has already accomplished.
So this is the second trip of Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane to Puerto Rico following a September 8th visit with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And Hegseth told sailors and Marines during that visit that they were being deployed to the front lines of a critical counter-narcotics mission. How unprecedented is this action by the U.S. against narcotics?
It's actually not unprecedented at all. This has been going on for many decades. In fact, back when I was a junior officer, I was flying counter-narcotics missions in the Caribbean as well. So this has been going on for a very, very long time. It's just not happened on this scale. We haven't taken kinetic actions like this in the past. Historically, it's either been, the U.S. would detect and monitor and then zero in Customs and Border Patrol aircraft or the Coast Guard to go and seize these vessels, or direct aircraft in some other ways. Sometimes, these guys would jump off the boat and they wouldn't ever be heard from again. Dump the drugs off of their boats into the water, which is a reason why these kinetic actions have been taken. Because if you try to arrest them or capture them, which I would be in favor of, the problem is they dump all the evidence overboard, and all you see is them dumping stuff overboard, and they might say, "Oh, we're just dumping bags of rice," and you wouldn't ever be able to prove it one way or the other. So this is a serious step up to try to discourage further use of the open sea to transport drugs into the United States. And frankly, I think that the U.S. military, the heavy presence of U.S. military is there to perhaps discourage the Venezuelan military from perhaps employing any counter operations against these drones and other aircraft and ships that are taking off these small boats.
So the U.S. Marines completed a 6-day training exercise last week alongside the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Is the U.S. laying preparations for further action in the region to combat narcotics coming into the U.S.? What are your thoughts on this?
It's entirely possible. I don't believe that it is in the U.S.'s best interest to basically have boots on the ground within Venezuela. You never tell an adversary what you are not going to do because that simply just puts you into a box. An invasion of Venezuela would have its own kinds of complications. And I don't really know that it's really necessary, frankly, at this point. The isolation, I think, is working really, really well. You have to look at the series of options and tools that you have on the table and how you're employing them. And you get to a point where you have sort of the maximum best value benefit, if you will, especially when it comes to international cooperation in the eyes of the international community and bringing this stuff down. Certainly in the eyes of Europe, even though they haven't necessarily been vocal about this, we're stopping a lot of drugs from coming into the European continent as well. It'd be nice if they were a little bit more vocal about it, but they're not. But at the same time, I'm sure they're very happy that this stuff isn't coming to their country. So I think the balance that we have right now is very, very good. Perhaps kinetic actions against Venezuela, inside Venezuelan territory, may jeopardize that.
So To your point, saying that it's not a good idea to have boots on the ground in Venezuela, President Trump actually did not rule that out. Can you just comment on that? Perhaps President Trump is sending a message?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, you never want to tell an adversary what you're not going to do. So by having them there and keeping the Venezuelan regime guessing is what I think he's intending to do. The Maduro regime, it's not a cartel in the formal sense, but it's been labeled one as such, this loose agglomeration of, criminal activities. And certainly in U.S. intelligence has been able to follow the money, find money coming from the narco traffickers going into the, accounts that are connected with government officials. I fully believe that that's actually happening because, the Venezuelan government is not stable. Their oil production is going down. Their military is very, very old. Maduro is not popular. He's basically holding her through an iron fist, and the U.S. is trying to weaken that as much as possible, and perhaps hoping that some of his allies who might also be on the take might be saying this is not working out, and either move against Maduro themselves or leave. And basically force him out of power so that we can get a new government there in Venezuela. I think ultimately this is all about regime change, even though the U.S. has not been public about it.
All right, Armin, good comments today. Thank you for talking to us.
Thanks, Don. Have a great day.
Today is the start of the Thanksgiving travel period. Gas Buddy says drivers should see reasonable prices at the pump. And the FAA says air travelers should benefit from air traffic control operations recovering from the government shutdown. Here's a look.
Thanksgiving travel is taking off. AAA forecasts a record-setting holiday period between today and Monday. AAA projects almost 82 million people will venture at least 50 miles from home. That would be last year's record. The association predicts almost 90% of people will drive, about 6 million will fly, and less than half that will choose other transportation. The FAA expects the 2025 Thanksgiving holiday period to be the busiest for air travel in 15 years, with today projected to have the most flights and
Thanksgiving week and Christmas week as well typically do see higher disruption rates.
Some issues are already coming up. The FAA says a problem with an air traffic control frequency caused a ground stop in Dallas yesterday. Near Seattle, a pipeline leak is limiting jet fuel supplies.
Her flight got rerouted and delayed. She has to take a stop in Alaska because of the fuel line thing. She thought it was very inconvenient. I mean, she has to be on a flight for an extra 6 hours or something.
As air travelers plan for possible disruptions,
come fly with me, let's fly away.
Transportation Secretary Duffy is trying to restore courtesy and class to air travel with this new campaign.
Let's bring civility and manners back. Ask yourself, are you helping a pregnant woman put her bag in the overhead bin? Are you dressing with respect? Are you keeping control of your children? The golden age of travel begins with you.
To make air travel smoother and more pleasant ahead of the holidays, transportation officials are talking about the golden age of travel. NTD's David Lam has more.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
That's the start of the Transportation Department's new civility campaign called The Golden Age of Travel Starts With You, comparing air travel from back in the day to today in a 1.5-minute video.
Let's bring civility and manners back. Ask yourself, are you helping a pregnant woman put her bag in the overhead bin? Are you dressing with respect? Are you keeping control of your children? The golden age of travel begins with you.
The campaign is intended to restore courtesy and class to air travel.
For us, this week is our Super Bowl, and I'm here to tell you we've got a great plan. We're past the lapse, controllers are back at work, and of course we hope we have everyone treating one another with respect, so follow the golden rule. I will tell you, however, that we will not hesitate to utilize our enforcement authorities if anyone is causing any problems in the airport or on aircraft.
Transportation Secretary Duffy says manners don't stop at the gate and things aren't as they used to be. The Transportation Department says that since 2019, the FAA has seen a 400% increase of in-flight outbursts. In 2021, there were almost 14,000 incidents regarding unruly passengers, where 1 in 5 flight attendants experienced physical incidents.
How do we, maintain maybe some of that frustration we have as we travel this Thanksgiving season? We should say please and thank you to our pilots and to our flight attendants. I would encourage people to maybe dress a little better, which encourages us to maybe behave a little better.
Flight restrictions have also been rolled back. The department is building a new air traffic control system, boosting air traffic control hiring through its academy, and trying to make travel more family-friendly. The FAA expects the 2025 Thanksgiving holiday period to be the busiest for air travel in 15 years. David Lamb, NTD News.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy launched a civility campaign aimed at bringing civility and courtesy back in America. To discuss, we have Jeffrey Tucker, founder and president of the Brownstone Institute and senior columnist at the Epoch Times. So Jeffrey, always great to see you here. So what do you think? Secretary Sean Duffy says he sees a degradation in civility. He was referring to air traffic, or rather air travelers. But do you think it goes beyond just airports?
Well, certainly it's not in our imagination. The whole world has become coarser and more degraded over the last 5 years, I would say. Maybe it goes back longer. I don't know. The good news is that there is something you can do about this. You can dress up when you go to the airport to fly in a plane. And I'm telling you, I do this every time, and I don't understand why people are not doing it. It's the magic trick. I mean, to walk, your Uber driver treats you better. When you walk into the airport, the TSA will be nicer to you. When you get on the plane, other customers will smile at you and thank you. And the best moment comes when you get on the plane and the flight attendants look at you and say, "Thank you for dressing up. You look fantastic today." And they smile at you. And if you have a problem with your bag, they're going to help you. They're going to go out of the way to help you. And just these little tiny favors come to you simply because you are showing them respect. It's not about showing off your clothes. It's about showing respect for the institutions and the people who work for the institutions. And this is a magic trick that anybody can use. Instead of showing up in your pajamas looking like a slob, wearing your worst because you want to be comfortable. No, you dress up because you owe it to others to show them respect, in exchange for which they will show you respect too.
Well, I have to say, that role sounds great. How do we get back to that? What role has media or popular culture played, do you think, in how civil we are?
I don't understand entirely why this has happened. I really do think that people, well, on the dress point in particular, people imagine that how they dress is all about themselves. This is completely wrong. It's about what you are saying about other people. It's about the amount of respect you have for other people. So you need to forget about yourself, and you're not the most important thing in the world. What really matters is what you, in your power, are saying about others. And if you're deferring to others and using decent manners, you will find that you'll be personally treated better. And I learned this secret a long time ago. Ultimately, it redounds to your benefit because when you travel especially, you are kind of in a position of depending on the kindness of strangers, whether it's getting a good seat at the restaurant you're going to, being served well, being told about the specials. You might be able to even get a free drink, on the airline, which I'm sorry, it happens to me. Or when you have to get an instruction about like put your seatbelt on or whatever, it will be said in a way that's pleasant instead of mean. And the other thing is that when you're getting on an airplane or getting off an airplane, if you see anyone having trouble with their bag, just reach up and help them a little bit. I mean, it's these kind of small kindnesses that just make the world a better place, and it spreads and spreads and spreads. And the opposite is true. I mean, the more degraded the culture gets, the more people feel like there's no reason to bother. We might as well just look after ourselves and rush past everybody and then not be mean to people and complain about everything. And that kind of attitude spreads also. So what I'm saying is to all the people who are listening to this interview right now, it really does just start with you. You can make the world more civil, more beautiful, more enjoyable, and happier just by your own actions, your own behaviors. Reflect on what your mom or your grandmother taught you, and adopt this in your own life. And yeah, okay, people could be mean to you still, but brush it off and move on. Like, see yourself on a mission, a mission from God, if you want, to make the world a better place. It's within your capacity and the choices that you make, whether we're going to inhabit a beautiful civilized life that's enjoyable for everybody or participate in the degradation. I think everybody really wants to live in a good society, really. I think we all do, in which case we all need to do our part, especially during the holiday season.
It starts with you. So simple and yet such wise advice, Jeffrey. Can we get a comment as well on this initiative, civility campaign? What role does the government play in this?
Oh, I don't know if there's anything government can do to make us more civil, but I think it helps when cabinet officials and other officials in the government are urging people to smile, be nice, to dress up. I mean, it's a good thing, right? I mean, sometimes this stuff does actually flow down from the top, not by force, but just by inspiration and by urging. And like we absolutely have to fix this now. We've been through too much as a nation over too many years and seen where it's gotten us, to a coarser, angrier world of nonstop complaints. The thing that you find is that when you get in the habit of complaining, it becomes strangely addictive. You can't do anything else. Everybody should just try and experiment some one day. Wake up and say, today I'm not going to complain about anything. And every time you do complain, just pinch yourself or something, or write it down on a piece of paper. You will find you will complain less. And then if you hear yourself complain less or think fewer complaints, you will become a happier person. Yes, there are frustrations. Yes, there are things that break. Yes, there are things you have to clean up. There's certain things that divert you from your preferred course. But in those moments, thank God for the gift of life and for the use of your hands and for the use of your mental powers to fix things, to act to improve your own world, whether you're alone in your house or apartment, or traveling with others. There are ways, things that are within you, within your power, to make the world a more beautiful place. Thank God for the beautiful, magical, mysterious gift of life every day and every minute, and use it to the betterment of your fellow man and yourself and the world around you. Instead of just constantly complaining about the state of the world, make some effort to make a difference, and you will inspire other people to do the same. I promise you, and that's great. It's great because you will have an impact on the world, and you'll see how your behavior and your mental outlook actually spreads throughout the entire culture. This is how you make the world a more beautiful place.
So you said complaining is addictive. I would argue the opposite is actually true as well, in the sense that if you're more nice more often, it can be also addictive as well. Okay, so I want to move on to your article that you wrote on the Epoch Times newspaper titled America and the Spirit of Respect. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that? What would you say is the biggest difference between Americans now and the Americans generations before?
Yeah, so that is, I think, the opening chapter of this book called The Spirits of America. And I really like it's based on a theme that was first articulated to me by Eric Sloan. And what he wants to do is replace this word patriotism, which was bandied about politically all the time, and especially in Eric Sloan's time, was sometimes used to force people to support policies they don't like. What he wants to replace it with is what he calls the spirit of respect, which is to honor our founding fathers and the institutions they created, the causes for which they fought, and the way they are, in many ways, our benefactors, and all of our ancestors that have built this country systematically through the generations, and how we find ourselves just plopped into this world surrounded by blessings all around us, none of which we had anything none of which we had anything to do with creating. And that should infuse us with a sense of awe and respect for the values, the people, the generations, the institutions that came before us, and show that sense of gratitude. So that's what he meant by the spirit of respect. Now, at Thanksgiving, it's a beautiful thing that America has this wonderful holiday. It really just belongs to Americans ourselves, which is to thank our neighbors, our friends, our institutions, and God for all the blessings that have come to us. We pause one day a year just to do that. It's not just to gobble up a bunch of turkey and stuff ourselves and watch football. It's to pause and be grateful for all the blessings that we have. If we have a little, we should be grateful. If we have a lot, we should be very grateful. But regardless of what we have life, for which we should be infinitely grateful every single day. So Thanksgiving is set aside just for that purpose. It was established in the colonial times after several hard winters when they realized what deprivation was like. And then through hard work and persistence, getting along with our neighbors, through seeing a full season of growing, get to the end point, and then suddenly we're surrounded by bounty. And at that moment, you just pause and you say, thank you, God, for bringing me these beautiful gifts, and thank you for my beautiful family, and thank you for my beautiful community. It's a very simple message, but you know what? I suppose next to Christmas, it is the most popular holiday. It's not on the religious calendar. It's on our civic calendar, but it has also deep religious implications for our lives. That's coming up on Thursday. That could be a turning point for all of us to express a gratitude, respect, and thankfulness for all the blessings that are around us, and to rally around the values and practices that make those blessings possible.
You know, Jeffrey, I'm surprised. I didn't know you had such good advice on how to better a person's character. Thank you for sharing with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about these important subjects.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump and First Lady Melania participated in the Thanksgiving turkey pardoning ceremony at the White House today. Here's the president at this beloved American tradition.
Are you ready? Gobble. I just want to tell you this, very important. You are hereby unconditionally pardoned. That's nice. I don't want to harm this beautiful bird.
The two turkeys spared from the dinner table this year are named Waddle and Gobble. They weigh over 50 pounds each and come from North Carolina. Trump joked that because President Biden used an auto pen to pardon turkeys last year, the pardons were invalid, but he is repardoning Peach and Blossom anyway. The president also announced updates on peace negotiations in the Russia-Ukraine war.
And we're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there. 25,000 soldiers, Ukraine, Russia. In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out. I thought that one would have been gone quicker. We did 8. I thought that would have been an easier one, but I think we're making progress.
Trump touted that Thanksgiving costs will be lower this year. He hopes all Americans can enjoy Thanksgiving with family and friends and renew their faith in God. The president thanked God for the success of the country. He also thanked the First Lady and the armed forces. Trump plans to fly to his Florida resort later today to celebrate Thanksgiving. The Saks Fifth Avenue Holiday Light Show returned this year after taking off last year, adding to the many holiday shows in New York City that entertain locals and visitors. NTD Sean Marshall has more.
Saks Fifth Avenue Holiday Light Show makes its return for the 2025 winter season. Crowds came out to watch the display of lights, sounds, dancing, and a grand fireworks display right in Midtown Manhattan. People watched focused in awe of the colorful light display covering the Saks Fifth Avenue store.
it's excellent. They finally brought it back. They didn't do it last year. And now they finally brought it back. Different soundtrack, different theme, all diamonds and all that.
So you've been to them in the past. What did you think of this compared to the older ones?
Yep, it's tough to say. They change it up every year. Every year it's excellent, the way they do it.
New York City is full of tourists just walking around and luckily find organized holiday events happening. And some know right where to look for all the best shows.
All the way from the UK to watch that Spennymoor, County Durham.
It's really nice. It's nice and bright. It reminds me of, holiday decor, so I'm excited to see it. I haven't been here in a long time.
Cold night didn't stop the public from viewing a popular holiday show favorite, one that many will return to watch again next year. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Picture this, the heart of Manhattan, full of energy, movement, and life. Now imagine bringing that same vitality into your home, with trusted health insights for your body, mind, and soul. Every week, Vital Signs dives into health issues that matter the most. The foods that strengthen your immune system, the exercises that keep you moving, the mindfulness practices that calm your mind, plus expert advice from doctors and health leaders you can trust. This isn't just another health show. It's real insight designed to keep you informed, inspired, and in motion. So whether you're starting your day with focus or winding down with balance, Vital Signs brings health and vitality straight into your living room.